Hi, I'm just coming to you today to reminisce a little bit. I don't know why, but for the last few days, could be because I was stuck in the house with the blizzard and the frigid cold temperatures. But it started me thinking about some of the things, and we all have all those little incidents in our lives that form the fabric of our lives and make us who we are as people. So I was thinking about a few of the things and I thought I'd share it with you today. Stay tuned if you want to watch, and if you enjoy this kind of just chit chat, let me know and we can do some more of them. And I will see you at the other end. Just wanted to chat a little bit today about couple of the things that we each have in our lives that kind of make us the people that we are as we get through this whole process called life. And I was thinking about it the other day because I was sitting and I was thinking about the way that I prefer to dress and the way that I prefer to look. And it's always a little bit more of a look of elegance than anything else. And all of a sudden, I started to think back to the days when I was a little girl. I was always very, very much influenced by my surroundings. And it was not pretty. I mean, there was just nothing pretty. And I always had this innate sense that there was something nicer and better and just a nicer way to live. Everything in those days, in the way that we lived, was all about function. Did it function? That was it. That was enough. I remember my father had a cousin. And every time my father talked about cousin Joey, he would light up. He loved his cousin Joey. Joey was funny. It was fun. And he was a lot of fun to be with. And he was a great guy. As I recall, he worked in the garment industry, and he must have had a good job because he lived in the kind of fancy part of town. And I remember a few times when my father would say, "We're going to Joey's house." Well, that was always a thrill. The first time I met Adele, Joey's wife, we got into their apartment, and everything in the apartment was elegant. The furnishings were elegant. Everything was perfect. Everything was in place. The food was just done to perfection with all the little tidbits set up beautifully on plates. And Adele, who was this kind of a wisp of a woman, I recall her as having reddish hair, and she was very slim, and she was a petite woman. I remember one of the times, and I don't remember if it was the first time, but one of the times she was serving and she was with us. She was wearing a caftan. I'd never seen a caftan before, but there she was in this flowing garment. Just, she seemed to float through the place as she was entertaining. And I remember thinking, I want to look like that. I want to be like that. I want to be Adele. Joey would sit there. Joey always had a twinkle in his eye, and he had this kind of a dimple kind of thing, and he was smiling all the time, and he was happy, and Adele was happy, and it was just a wonderful place to go. I remember another time when we were in their apartment, Adele was wearing a kind of two-piece lounging outfit that had flowing pants. And that too, I mean, it was just one of those things that you kind of take in, and it goes into that register in your brain where it somehow lives until you're in a place where you can put some of that into play. And the truth was that whenever I entertained, I did the same thing. I always dressed in a lovely outfit like that, and I would try to have things looking wonderful. I'm sure I never did as well as Adele did, but I looked up to her always, and she was the person I wanted to emulate. I really wanted to grow up to be Adele. So I think she's in large measure, or the two of them are, and the way that they lived, in large measure responsible for who I am as an adult and who I've been all these years. Never made the association until very recently. Interesting. There was also this story about when my mother was ever the optimist. She always would think she was going to win something wonderful. And when I was a young girl and very impressionable by then, we had lived in an apartment, and by then, no, I'm not sure. I don't remember if my younger brother was born yet. If he was probably young. But we lived in an apartment, and there was this house that my mother used to take me to, and she took me there several times. The house was furnished. It was brand new. And I remember the furnishing, and they also had a rope the way they had in movie theaters, or if you went to the theater, to keep you behind the rope when there were celebrities around or anything of that nature. And they had the rope so you couldn't walk into the rooms and dirty them or make them look worn. You could just look from afar. And we would walk through that house, and my mother would always say, maybe we'll win it. There was a raffle for that house. So for the duration of that raffle, and I don't know how long it was, but it was long enough for me to really believe that that might be our house. Needless to say, it was not. Needless to say, we never did win the house, and we stayed in that apartment. But when I was an adult and I had my first place, the one thing I remember is it was a low bench. In those days, they had that kind of, I guess, modern kind of feel that was happening at that time. This bench was, I don't know, maybe 4 feet long. It was slatted on top. I seem to recall that it was either walnut or teak. And it stood on 4 legs, 2 legs at either end, and it had the spaces in between the slats. And I put magazines on there and a couple of throw pillows, just like they had in that model home. And I think that's probably where my love for decorating started. And though I never thought about it, where I had that need to make the places that I was involved with look beautiful. And to this day, I get no greater pleasure than taking somebody's space and turning it into something extraordinary from something relatively ordinary or mundane. So I think it really had its genesis back there. It was interesting. There was the year that I was having Thanksgiving in my house. I had not had it for some years. I had moved into this house by that time, and I was having 15 people for dinner. I was a wreck because I was having 15 people. I didn't have plates, or I didn't have silverware. I didn't have glasses for 15 people. So my somebody had said to me, one of my friends had said to me, don't worry about it, use paper plates. And I mentioned it to my then partner, and she said to me, are you crazy? You can't have paper plates. You have to have dishes and flatware and glasses. And I always, and to this day, I used to drink from stemware all the time, but it was crystal. I mean, I always drank from crystal goblets or crystal glasses. That's the way it was. And what happened was I started to buy things for the dinner. First, I was thinking, okay, there were going to be some people there that I really, not that I wanted to impress that way, but it was somebody that my son was seeing, and it was important to him that everything be just right. So I wound up going out. I kept looking at dishes, and all the dishes I could find that were just regularly priced dishes were not beautiful. I wound up buying a set of Lennox dishes. So I now had two sets of dishes to be able to serve these 15 people. In the end, I had to buy dishes. I bought stemware. I bought flatware, and I used silver plate. I never did have silver, sterling silver, but I always used silver plate. So I bought an extra set of silver plate. I also, back then, did not have a microwave. It was before I got my first microwave. Actually, my first microwave is still my microwave. It's lasted all these years. By the time I tallied it up and I said what I spent for that Thanksgiving dinner, not counting the food, not counting the drink, was $3,000. And I remember saying, I better do Thanksgiving dinner for many more years so I can prorate the cost. But it was really funny. So every time I thought about it, I was kind of reminded of my $3,000 Thanksgiving dinner. One of the other memories from that particular day was my cousin was at the house with her daughter, and she had a very young grandson. And her grandson, I think, was 2 years old or something. The way my house is set up, there is a long hall from the bedrooms to the living room. And he not only kept running back and forth down that hall. Now, mind you, everything in the house was set up to look perfect. They were encouraging him to run because he was just gleeful about it, and they were having fun with it. The problem was I was running back and forth to the kitchen to make sure everything was ready at the same time and to go through the whole process. And I finally came into the dining room. I sat down on a chair for a minute just to catch my breath when this child came over to my cousin's chair, rested his hands on her knees, and promptly threw up. So now here I was preparing my wonderful dinner for all these people, and we had to deal with vomit. So I guess you can just never be too fancy is what that's all about. Just a few of the memories that kind of go into my memory bank and are part and parcel of who I am. We all have them. I'd love to hear some of yours. One of you had asked me about a smoky eye and wanted to know how I do a smoky eye. I don't do smoky eyes that often, but I did it today. Take a close look. If you like the look and you want me to show you how to do it, nothing fancy to it. It's really simple, actually. But if you want to see how to do it, holler, and I'll be happy to do a demo on it. So take care. Hope it's great wherever you are. At least it's not snowing here. At least today, the weather is up high enough that I don't have to wear 3 layers of clothing, even though I am 3 days into a cold that had my nose looking mightily like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I think I covered it relatively well with makeup, but not fun. So take care, my friends, and I will see you soon when we get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Take care. Bye-bye.